Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. My name is Owen. The last time I saw Grace, she was standing at the kitchen sink in her robe, back turned to me, humming an old tune she used to sing before everything changed. She didn't know I'd already made up my mind. But let me rewind. Grace and I weren't some whirlwind romance story. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue. She had this blunt way of talking, no sugarcoating, just straight to the point. I liked that. Still do, to be honest. We dated for 2 years before getting married. It was simple, no big wedding. Just us, our parents, and a rented hall. Grace wore a cream-colored dress she found at a thrift store and laughed when someone asked if it was vintage. That's how she was. Sharp, low maintenance, unbothered. Our first couple years were good. We didn't have a lot, but we had rhythm. Mornings were coffee and crossword puzzles, nights were leftovers and reruns. We'd argue sometimes, about money, about my work hours, about her mother calling too much. But it never stuck. Then, one winter, Grace's father, Harold, had a stroke. He wasn't a great man, not to her, not to anyone. But she dropped everything to take care of him, moved him into our spare room, set alarms for his medication, bathed him when he couldn't stand. I admired her for it at first. I tried to help, but she didn't want it. "He's my problem," she said. I didn't press it, but I should have. Things shifted after that. Grace became short with me, cold. She stopped coming to bed some nights, started sleeping in a chair by Harold's door. I'd wake up, and the sheets next to me would still be neat. "You all right?" I asked one morning as she poured coffee without looking at me. "I'm tired," she said. "That's all." She didn't kiss me goodbye that day. It was the first goodbye that felt like a warning. Harold passed away 3 months later. Grace didn't cry at the funeral. She just stood there, arms crossed, staring at the casket like she was waiting for him to sit up and ruin her day one last time. That night, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, sipping straight bourbon out of a chipped mug. I sat across from her, waiting for something, a breakdown, a moment of softness, anything. Instead, she said, "It's quiet now." Too quiet. I nodded. "We could go somewhere, just for a weekend. Get out of the house." She looked at me like I'd asked her to jump off the roof. "I'm not running away from grief, Owen," she said. "Some of us deal with things head on." I didn't answer. There wasn't a right one. After Harold, Grace went back to work, but she wasn't the same. She started coming home later. No explanations, no texts, just walked in, dropped her purse, and zoned out in front of the TV. One night, around 11, I asked, "Where were you?" She glanced over. "Out." "Out where?" "Out, Owen. What do you want? An itinerary." "I want to know what's going on with you." "Nothing's going on with me." "What's going on with you?" She stood up and left the room before I could answer. The fights weren't loud. They were quiet, controlled, like two people trying not to wake a sleeping baby. Only there was no baby, just silence that screamed louder every week. I started noticing things. Her phone was always face down. She'd laugh at messages she never explained. I wasn't sure if she was cheating, but it felt like her heart had already left the house. Her body just hadn't caught up. One morning, I looked at her across the table and realized I didn't recognize her expression anymore. Cold, closed off, like she was stuck in a war I couldn't see. So I did what men do when they're unsure. I waited, and waiting turned into watching. It started with an email. I wasn't snooping. I was on Grace's laptop, ordering a part for the sink. One of her tabs was still open, her email inbox. I wasn't trying to read anything, but one subject line stood out. "Thank you for your stay. Your receipt is attached." I clicked. It was a confirmation from a hotel. Just a short note, check-in details, timestamp, and a receipt. The date was from the previous weekend. She had told me she was visiting her cousin that day, just for the afternoon. She hadn't said a word about a hotel. No explanation, nothing. That night, I lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me, like she hadn't just slipped something under the surface and expected it not to be noticed. I didn't bring it up, not yet. Instead, I watched. That Thursday, she said she had dinner plans with her book club. Casual, normal. She even asked if I needed her to pick anything up on the way back. I waited 2 minutes after she left. Then I followed her. I stayed just far enough behind as she drove downtown. She parked near a bar. I waited across the street, engine off, watching through the windshield. She sat with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, sharp suit, the kind of guy who orders drinks with confidence. They didn't touch, but the way she leaned in, smiled. It wasn't nothing. When she got home that night, I asked, "Have fun?" She didn't blink. "What?" "Tonight. Wherever you were." "Book club," she said, peeling off her coat. We switched locations. I stared at her. "Book club, huh?" She walked past me without saying anything else. I stopped sleeping properly after that. I started checking her phone when she showered, reading call logs. But the strange thing? Nothing concrete ever showed up. Not one message out of line. No suspicious calls, no lipstick on his collar. It was like she was cheating in spirit, but not in action. And somehow, that made it worse. Because I couldn't prove anything, not even to myself. I finally asked her straight out, "Is there someone else?" She looked at me like I'd accused her of murder. "No," she said, "but maybe there should be." That one stuck. Like a splinter under my skin I couldn't dig out. After that night, something cracked open between us. We stopped pretending. Dinner turned into silence. The couch became a wall. Even when we shared the same bed, it felt like we were miles apart. I started sleeping on the couch most nights without even discussing it. Just seemed easier that way. One Saturday morning, she found me drinking coffee in the kitchen. She stood in the doorway, arms folded, still in her sleep shirt. "You know you're making this worse, right?" she said. I didn't even look up. "Making what worse?" "This tension. This paranoia. You keep looking at me like I'm your enemy. I don't know what you are anymore." She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then she walked over, snatched the coffee mug from my hand, and slammed it into the sink. It didn't shatter, but the sound hit like a scream. "You think I don't notice how you follow me? How you go through my phone? You're pathetic, Owen. I wouldn't have to if you acted like my wife. I stopped being your wife the day you stopped being a man." I stood up so fast the chair tipped backward. "I've done nothing but try, Grace. While you sulk and lie and hide behind this act like you're grieving some great loss, your father's gone, and I get it. He was awful, but I'm still here. I've been here." She shook her head, voice trembling. "You don't get it. You've never gotten it. He ruined me, Owen. You think I wanted to take care of him? You think that didn't reopen every scar he ever left? I'm not him. But you watched me fall apart, and all you did was watch." That one landed harder than I expected. Because she wasn't wrong. I had stood on the sidelines while the woman I loved turned into someone else. I didn't know how to reach her, so I didn't. I kept showing up, waiting for her to bounce back. But people don't always bounce. Sometimes they break. That fight ended with her slamming the bedroom door, and me walking out the front. Not far. Just far enough to wonder if this house would ever feel like home again. After that fight, something in me gave up. I stopped asking where she was going. I stopped waiting for her to come home. The house became a waiting room. Same four walls, same tension in the air, just quieter now. Dead quiet. I'd get off work and sit in the car for half an hour before going inside, just listening to the hum of the engine, staring at the porch light, like it was some kind of warning. Then came the night I didn't come home at all. It wasn't planned. Just happened. My old college buddy, George, had invited me out for drinks. I showed up tense, left drunk. I crashed on his couch and woke up to 7 missed calls from Grace. When I walked through the door the next morning, she didn't yell. She didn't even ask where I'd been. She just looked at me and said, "You stink of beer." That was it. I started staying out more after that. Not with women, just with noise. Bars, pool halls, cheap diners that stayed open late, places where nobody asked you how your marriage was going. Back home, Grace started to bite less. Not because things got better, she was just too tired to care. We stopped fighting because we stopped talking. The worst kind of silence isn't the kind that comes after yelling. It's the kind that settles in like fog, thick, heavy, constant. I knew something was coming. I just didn't know when. Then, one Monday morning, I walked into work and found an envelope on my desk. Department closure, position terminated. Effective immediately, no warning, no severance. Just like that, I had nowhere to go at 9 a.m. and no reason to go home. Grace didn't even ask about the job. I came home that afternoon, sat down at the kitchen table, and waited for her to say something, anything. She walked in, saw me sitting there in the middle of the day, and without even dropping her keys, said, "You better not be day drinking." "No," I said. "I got laid off." She paused, just for a beat, then shrugged. "Guess you'll have more time to fix the lawn," she said, before disappearing into the bedroom. That was the moment. Not the yelling, not the drinking, not even the suspicion. That one shrug, like my failure was an inconvenience, like I had become something in the way. That was what did it. The next morning, while she slept, I packed a single bag. Some clothes, my ID, my laptop. Nothing sentimental. I left the wedding photo on the mantel untouched. I didn't leave a note. I didn't want to explain myself. Not again. Not after all the years of silent punishment. I drove 3 hours south to a town no one I knew had reason to visit. Rented a room in a cheap motel by the highway. Spent the first 2 days staring at the ceiling, not really thinking, just breathing for the first time in what felt like forever. On the third day, I opened the laptop, started applying for remote gigs, copywriting, transcription, whatever I could get. It was slow at first, then one job led to another. I made enough to keep the lights on and the fridge stocked. I stopped checking my phone. Then I stopped carrying it. Eventually, I ditched it altogether. A month later, I found a studio apartment in a coastal town that smelled like salt and old wood. I paid 6 months in advance and didn't tell a soul where I'd gone. I was off the grid, not to disappear forever, but to remember who I was before all the noise. It had been 9 months since I left. By then, the studio apartment had started to feel like mine. I had routines. I'd wake up early, walk along the beach with a thermos of black coffee, come back, knock out freelance work till noon, and spend the afternoons doing things I'd forgotten I liked. Reading, cooking, fixing old furniture from junk shops. I wasn't thriving, but I was focused. I was steady. I hadn't spoken to Grace, hadn't told George where I was. I figured they'd all moved on, or assumed I was just gone for good. Then one afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out. 30 seconds later, a text popped up. "Please don't hang up. It's your sister, Claire. It's important." I called her back. "Owen," she said, breathless. "She's been looking for you." My stomach didn't drop. It just tightened. "She who?" "Grace. She's been calling everyone. Friends, family, even Dad." I stayed quiet. "She said you didn't leave a note. That she didn't know if you were dead. Owen, she's been looking hard. Hired someone." I didn't ask why. I just said, "I'm fine," and hung up. 2 weeks later, it happened. A knock at the door. Not a mailman knock. A patient, uncertain one. I opened it and there she was. Grace, standing there in jeans and a windbreaker, hair tied back, face older than I remembered. She didn't speak right away. Just stared at me like I was a painting she wasn't sure was real. "I'm not here to fight," she said finally. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, taking in the small room. The books, the beat-up table, the view of the ocean through the window. She turned to me. "I didn't come to beg," she said. "I just wanted to say some things. You don't owe me anything, but I owe you." Then she sat down, and for the first time in 2 years, Grace didn't look angry. She looked human. Grace didn't cry. She spoke plainly, just like she used to back when we still laughed over burnt pancakes and Netflix. "I blamed you," she said, "for everything. My father, the house, the way I felt every day like I was drowning in silence." She looked out the window. "I never told you what it did to me, watching him die like that. Watching myself become someone I hated." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She kept going. "I used you as a punching bag. You were just there, easy, familiar. And I pushed you until you stopped pushing back." She looked up at me. "I didn't cheat, but I wanted to. Not because I wanted someone else, because I wanted to feel like a person again, wanted to feel seen, wanted to be someone other than a daughter, a nurse, a ghost in my own house." I studied her face. The edge was gone. The fight, too. "What changed?" I asked. "I went to therapy," she said. "Finally, after you left. At first, just to be able to say I tried. But then, it stuck." She swallowed hard. "I learned how much I'd buried, how much I'd projected, how little I knew about the damage I was doing. And I started missing you, not the version that was breaking down, the version I never made space for. Then she stood. I know I broke things I can't unbreak, and I don't expect to walk back into your life, but I needed to tell you that I see it now. What I did, what you carried, and I'm sorry. She walked to the door, paused, and said, "If you ever want to talk again, you know how to find me." Then she was gone. I didn't follow, not because I didn't care, but because this time I needed space. That night, I sat by the window and listened to the ocean roll in. Same rhythm, same hush. She wasn't the villain. I wasn't the hero. We were just two people who didn't know how to stop bleeding on each other. But now, the bleeding had stopped. Maybe someday we'd try again, or maybe that knock was the closure I didn't know I needed. Either way, for the first time in years, I didn't feel lost. I felt done, and that was enough. Thank you for watching.